Hi guys, my name is Suryansh Basumalik and this is another weekly debate of the Flow Shows. Judging with me this time, it's Ranak Banerjee. He's been debating with us for quite some time and it's his first time judging on this debate. So thank you for coming in, Ranak. The motion under the hammer today reads, this house will abolish primary and secondary school grades years that group children based on age and instead would group them by competency and intelligence. Keeping this motion in mind, to repeat for anyone who couldn't get it, it is this house would abolish primary and secondary school grades that group children based on age and instead group them by competency and intelligence. We have four speakers with us, like the last time. We have with us Aditya Das, Sia Agarwal, Arithro Mukherjee, and Akash Kaur. From the proposition, it will be Sia and Akash, and from the opposition, it will be Advityo and Ayon. Kicking things off for the proposition in today's debate, it's going to be Sia Agarwal. And like all the others, Sia, you will have 3 minutes on the clock, followed by a question from either me or Ranak, if we have one, and maybe one from the participants if they have one too. That in mind, Sia, are you ready? Excellent. Sia, you can unmute yourself and have the floor for the next 3 minutes.
Okay. Anton Chekhov once said, "Wisdom comes not from age, but from education and learning." Sitting in class, watching the teacher drone on and on about the same thing can be infuriating. On the other hand, sometimes it feels like everything's going over the top of your head. Before you understand one chapter, the class is already moving on to the next. I'm sure all experienced at least one of these situations in school, and it can get extremely frustrating. After all, God didn't look at babies that were born on the same year and give them equivalent brains. That's not how it works. Some of us learn faster, while others take longer to consume information. That is why some people get low marks while others score full. However, if students were grouped on the basis of intelligence, there would be more healthy competition based on hard work and attention paid in class. They would be more encouraged, and assessments would be conducted on a fairer level. With the current education system, though everyone has different brains, it is automatically assumed that everyone has the same level of competence, and the syllabus is imparted at the same pace for everyone in the class. This leads to students getting left behind, or some peers losing their concentration because it's too slow and boring. With a competency-based class, the teacher can find a pace which is best for everyone, making the learning a lot more enjoyable and wholesome. Just like how we can't choose when we're born, we don't have control over our capability to absorb knowledge. But in age-based grade systems, students with lower ability are sometimes bullied and shamed, while students with higher learning capacity are favored, making others feel inadequate and jealous. In an intelligence-based system, such issues wouldn't arise, as it would be normalized to learn at different speeds. People wouldn't feel insulted or get harassed with slurs demeaning their nature. This would help raise much more confident individuals with higher self-esteem and faith, as in such a system, you are automatically judged solely on your hard work, whereas in the current system, some have to take heavier loads and can't cope, while others race ahead. People will also do better emotionally and mentally with lesser stress in such an environment. It is a fair, efficient, and morally a better system of education. Therefore, schools should abolish primary and secondary grades based on age and instead group them based on their level of intelligence and competency. Thank you.
Excellent. Over 20 seconds left in your speech. Thank you, Sia. We'll be taking 2 questions from the floor, after which we will move forward to questions from either me or Ranak, if Ranak or I have one. Is there anyone with a question posed towards Sia? Can we have your cameras on for this portion? Is there anyone with a question?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Right. Arithro, go ahead.
So Sia, you spoke about lower ability students and how it takes them longer to grasp a topic, and therefore you would To abolish means complete removal of an education system which has been carrying on from ages. Why would you go through the trouble of completely abolishing an education system for lower ability students instead of coming up with other sections of and a part of an education system or another class or another grade where they can be with each other instead of abolishing it?
See, again, with a certain class of students who are born, like supposing they are of the same age, so there might not be as many students in one section, right? So like intelligent students and there are less number of slower students. So having only 5 students in one section does not make sense. It's also
Sia, I think you're cutting
for the
off.
teachers. If we pair them with students of other ages as well, right?
Right.
Sorry,
Sia, could you repeat your answer and like condense it a bit? We lost you because you were cutting out a little bit.
I think I'm breaking off.
Yeah, right. I think it's much clearer now. Can you repeat your answer in a little bit of a shorter way?
I'm sorry, what I your voice just
Right. I think we'll leave it be for now. Yeah. So, Sia, we're having quite a bit of connectivity issues with you. So, oh, right. Sia has lost connection to the meeting. So after she gets back, she will answer your question, Orithro. And I don't know if Ranak does, but I have a question too. So if Ranak, if you have a question, we can ask it when she returns, and maybe towards the latter part of the debate. So what we'll do for now is we shall move on to the next speaker, which is the one who will be kicking things off for the opposition, which I think will be started off through, I assume it was Akash.
I was in the proposition
All
speaker.
right, I apologize.
It
My
was
apologies.
me.
Yes, yes. You may. You have 3 minutes on the clock. Can you both hear us audibly and visibly?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Orithro, you have 3 minutes on the clock. You may begin.
Good evening, members of the House. Now, let us look into the motion once and observe what it really says. This House would abolish primary and secondary school grades or years that group children based on age and instead group them by intelligence and competency. Now, let's look at the roots of this motion, that is pedagogy. Now, what is pedagogy? Coined by Paget, pedagogy is simply the art of teaching carried on from the age of Aristotle and Socrates to our modern day egalitarian society. Pedagogy has changed immensely with time, from the era of the greatest philosophers to right now what we see in our online classes. Now, what has remained the same? This age-wise method of grouping, which the proposition would want to abolish. Now, what does the proposition know? Now, does the proposition know more than the greatest minds of the bygone eras? Now, let us look into what the proposition is actually saying for a minute. What is the now what the opposition might ask is what is the relevance of this method of teaching in today's day and age, to which I say BBC released a paper on such a topic where teachers had raised concerns that this could have a potential negative impact on not only the confidence but also the child's mental ability as such, which leads me to the most impounding questions on this topic one may ask. What will determine and define the intelligence or the competency of a child, especially as the topic specifies elementary and secondary grades? And how will one do this without discriminating between children? Now, we saw something of this sort happen in Lincoln Elementary School, where multi-age group classrooms were made. And let's hear what the teachers eventually had to say. The teachers saw this as an attempt to bring a whole new mindset, one which they honestly weren't ready for, and hence called this a failure and moved on without it. Other than this very example, there is very little to no evidence on this matter, most of which provided the same end result of it being unsuccessful. While on the other hand, we see Griffith University conducted research on age-based pedagogy and it received incredible results. So what do we see here? In the brutal realities of the dystopian modern society, it is to be observed under no circumstances are we ready to, nor should we try to nor should we try to afford to abolish the system nor implement the other. Thank you.
Right, with about 30 seconds left in the speech, thank you, Arithro, for your speech. We will be taking questions from the floor, after which we will see if Ranak or I have a question. Is there anyone with a question towards Arithro? Right. Right. Akash, you may ask a question towards Arithro. Go ahead.
Sir, you mentioned that this system isn't actually effective, but sir, sir, why do you think this system is not effective? Stating that this could essentially help the gifted minds to reach their epitome, help the gifted minds to fulfill their true potential by being with alike minds.
Sir, let me break this down to you like very simply. Sir, when we talk about this motion at hand, we need to understand where this motion might stem from. To grade people into a different abilities and intelligence and competency instead of age, we need to have a device system which can actually do that. And to do that right there and then, we will be discriminating between the children, telling one that the other is smarter than you and therefore he will be above you. This is where the teachers have the greatest problems, and this is something completely different to what is practiced currently, and this is a whole new revelation which honestly the teachers are not ready to face, and this provides a whole new aspect which abolishing the previous system and suddenly implementing this will have no effect, and as studies have already proven, this has proven to be ineffective.
Right.
Is a follow-up question allowed?
For a follow-up.
Right. So what we'll take, I'm sorry, but I think I see what you're going to be getting at, Akash. Don't worry. I've got the answer to his question. We're only marking the answers here. So I think I know what you're trying to say, Akash. But do feel free to rebut in your speech. And yes, we will take your questions here.
Right. So you said that this would lead to discrimination because students with higher ability will be in a higher section. But don't you think in the current uh, class system, there's already so much discrimination within the classroom itself?
Ma'am, let us look at this from a very layman perspective. Now, now I myself am a student in a class. Now, I as such do not see the discrimination you very well talk about, but say there is a certain discrimination between a student A and a student B where the teacher prefers student A. Now, that is a failure of the education system, not a failure enough of which for which we can abolish the current education system and implement a whole new education system which is not yet practical and not yet devised in a proper way to be implemented. Give me the answers of the method of division and give me research, give me studies which show that after abolishing it, we can actually implement with the system, and I will agree with you. But as of what we have seen and as of what we will see in the near future, this cannot be abolished.
Right. That man, thank you for the questions here. I hope that answers your question. Thank you for your response, Arithro. So, Ranak, do you have a question, or should I go ahead?
You can go ahead. After that, I can ask.
All right, fair enough. So, Arithro, my question is along similar lines to what Sia had to say. So, in a case where you wouldn't, so say for example, give me your opinion on this. Say for example, we did abolish the system. Do you think that because there's two levels to moving through classes, there is the cognitive abilities of the child that allow them to excel to the like-minded abilities of those older to them and in the higher classes if we're following this age-based class system, and there will also be the system wherein they're going to be put in along like-mindedness, right? Because there will be an age difference, there will also be a difference in terms of maturity and like social capabilities, right? So that could mean a lot of things. I need not elaborate that. So do you think, considering these factors, what would be your opinion in this situation wherein a child of, say for example, 10 years old is put in a higher class, which is of, let's say, comprised of mostly 14 to 15-year-olds? How do you think they would fare there? While this is not directly correlated to the motion. I want to hear your opinion on this.
Now, when we talk about a child being paired up, a 10-year-old child being paired up with someone of 14 years old, there is an immense maturity level difference that we currently see, and there is an exposure level difference. A 14-year-old child has experienced 4 years of life more than what the other child might have, and therefore they already have an advantage right there and then based off on experience. And experience, as per the greatest of philosophers, is the most crucial part after virtue in what life currently is. So based on this fact, this gives you a very unfair advantage in the second implemented system, which the proposition will be speaking about, and therefore I do not see it as a fit method to be applied.
Right. Thank you, Aritra. That answers my question. Ranak, if you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah. Orithro, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I just want a yes or no, right? So what I'm saying is that let's say we do put like 15-year-olds, let's say we do put all the students in a class, let's say the top 10 best economic students, we put in one class, right? So do you think that this intense competition of putting these top 10 economic students make them better? Like if I group all the brilliant minds or the best minds together, would it necessarily make them better? Would you agree with me if I said that, if I say that?
There are different types of competitions. It could stem to something really ugly, or it could stem to something beneficial. Now, it depends on what sort of grouping you're doing. If you're placing a class 9 student with a class 12 student, the class 12 student obviously knows a lot more, has experienced a lot more, has a lot more exposure. Therefore, it could stem down to a lot of ugliness, which might not be beneficial. But at the same time, the class 9 student could gain a lot of experience, but at the end of the day, it is not something we see happen in a dystopian society like ours.
So you're telling me this should be done only on a case by case basis? That it depends.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, fair enough. That's the answer. I hope that answers your question, Ranak. Right now, while I apologize for the bombardment of questions, Aritra, thank you for your responses. We will now move on to the next speaker, which is, I think, Akash speaking for the proposition. So, Akash, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So, Akash, like the others, you'll have 3 minutes on the clock. The floor is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Akash Kaur, and I'll be proposing for the motion at hand. Now, first we must understand what this system is. This system involves practice of placing students of the same academic level in the same group, as opposed to the earlier system, which is based on placement, based on age and grade levels. Now, we must understand that this system promotes healthy competition and bars bullying. Now, according to a report, 15 out of every 30 students are on an average bullied due to their difference in cognitive ability. This system could very well remove or abolish this. Now, we must also understand that this system keeps like-minded peoples, like-minded students together. We often say that great minds think alike. This system could very well segregate the gifted students and would give them a better opportunity to challenge their limits and surpass their potential, which would be beneficial for all. This system would also help us to keep system would also help students of all abilities to keep doing their respective assignments with and allowing them to utilize their time rather than being discriminated against by students who are on a higher cognitive level than them. Thus, concluding my speech, I believe that secondary education, secondary schools should be replaced with groups based on competency and intelligence. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hereby rest my case, but certainly not my stance.
Excellent. Akash, you have about a minute more to go. Would you like to carry on?
Now, I'd like to yield to questions.
Right, excellent. So that mind, thank you for your speech, Akash. So we'll take, I think, we'll take questions from the floor now. If there's a follow-up, I think we'll take it because of the expansive time. Orithro, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Right, go ahead.
Now, Akash, you spoke about discrimination between inside the class and in the higher level, higher level of intelligence students and the lower level. But the minute you take a group of students out from a class and take them into another class because they are more intellectually capable than the other lot, doesn't the other lot get a large boost of inconfidence, and they suddenly feel like they're failures, which is even more discriminating against them, for they will have to cope with that for a long period of time.
Sir, you must. I think you misunderstood my statement, sir. This policy or this system would actually benefit those students because they wouldn't be depressed or they wouldn't be felt inferior compared to other students. If they find people of their similar cognitive levels, they would find interest in studying more, which would be beneficial for them. And if you are talking about the students who have been separated, they would feel better because there would be much greater competition, and that would lead to more binding and more unity amongst them, which would otherwise be not possible.
I do have a follow-up.
Uh, yeah, we'll take your follow-up.
Now, Akash, you very well stated that there will be an increased level of competition from the students who have been taken out, like the lower level of intellect students. Now, if you get, say, a group of 10 students who are in the word dumber than the other lot, and if you group them together, wouldn't that just be making them even more dumb as they are mixing with all dumb peers? While in a class of 40 students where 10 are smarter and 10 are dumber, you see those 10 actually take inspiration from the other 10 and actually want to become something more intellectual.
Sir, you must understand that no one in this world is dumb. A person may not be good in may not be good in science, but he will obviously and has to be good in social studies. A person who is not good in English may has to be good in maths. So we must not. If a person, like if a group of people who are not good enough for science, or rather are not well enough in science, they could be grouped together. They might be good in English, which would ultimately lead to their development. So I don't think they could make them more dumb.
Right. Interesting answer. Thank you, Akash. Seeing as there's no other questions, we'll. Do you have a question, Rana? Because I don't.
I think I can go with it.
All right, go
So,
ahead.
Akash, in your speech, you clearly made out how if you group all the best students and segregate them, and great minds think alike, and so they would obviously benefit. As you said, no, sorry for being leftist, but I also have to think about all the other students who you are segregating in the bottom pile. Now the question is that, do you think it would be helpful for the ego of a 15-year-old and would be helpful for his motivation if he's grouped in, let's say, a bunch of 9-year-olds according to their same
Um,
cognitive level?
Sir, if this system is implemented, it will be implemented from the grassroots level. So at that point of time, I don't think there would be this class distinction and this age distinction, because if they find that their cognitive levels are same, they would obviously not think about the age limits, because they would find that they are all competent enough, and hence there would be lower discrimination.
Yeah, but they don't. But this cognitive level doesn't develop at the same rate. So after developing, let's say this 15-year-old has the same cognitive level as general 10-year-olds. Do you think it would be helpful for his motivation and ego if he's placed in the same bracket as them? Like I get it, the better minds
Yeah,
would
yeah, yeah.
obviously progress, but do you think it would be fair on the others,
Sir,
the dumber people?
Sir, again, I told you that that person might not be good in science because he doesn't have that maturity enough for science, but he might be good in art. He might be good in social studies, which would be possible at his level, which could be done if he was clubbed with other students of class 9 who are good in that.
Okay, okay. Thank you for your answer, Akash. Suryansh, you're muted.
Right. Thank you, Akash, for the response. Thank you, and I hope that answers your question, Ranak. I think before we move on to the last speaker, we had one question still left for Sia, which was a similar question as to what Ranak had to Akash. So before we move on to Aditya, I'd like to finish this off then and there. Sia, can you hear us loud and clear?
Yes.
Right. So I wanted to actually I had the same, technically the same question as Ranak, if we strip it down to its bare essentials. So I wanted to get your take on this too, considering you're also a member of the same stance. Again, a scenario in which a scenario in which, let's say, a child, like of, let's say, 13 to 15-year-old is put in a class with something dominated by 18 to 19-year-olds, or in a case where an 18-year-old is put in a class with maybe 10 to 12-year-olds, based on this system of like competence, based on whatever, let's say, whatever standardized test it is. Do you think it would be fair to that one child, or fair to that other group, that, oh, this guy is so smart, am I that dumb, or is he that smart? And like the level of second guessing and the hit to their motivation and their thought process. Now, thinking of a scenario, do you think that this would be a fair system to follow?
Okay, so sticking to the topic we've got, it wouldn't be something like one day you're having an age-based education system and the next day it's abolished and there's a whole new system implemented. It will be slowly implemented so that the mindsets of the students isn't such that, like I mentioned, we do not have control over how much we can absorb. We do not have control over our ability of absorbing information or knowledge. So if the 13-year-old is comfortable and is being able to keep up the pace with the 18-year-olds in class, then it shouldn't be a problem. And if the 18-year-old is getting more efficient and is being able to learn better with the other 13-year-olds, it shouldn't be a problem. So it will be, it should, along with the system itself, it has to be implemented in such a way that it will not lead to discrimination.
Right, got it. Thank you, Sia. That wraps it up for the case of the proposition. So, with that in mind, we shall now move on to the final speaker of today's debate. We will wrap up with the final speaker of the opposition, which is Aditya Das. I seem to be getting your name correct now, so that's good on me. Aditya, you have
Yeah,
3 minutes on the clock like the others. So, are you ready? Advityo, are you with
yeah,
us? All right, excellent. So,
yeah,
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 so you have 3 minutes. You may begin.
yeah. So, a very good evening to one and all. So, today, me, Advitya Das, will be speaking against the motion of the House. Let me start my constructive with a fact. In 2012, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development of Nations found out that countries that had organized multi-age classrooms, that is the classroom which were divided on the basis of abilities, it was seen that a higher rate of school dropout rates was seen and a low level of achievements. So what can be the reasons for this? First of all, a reason that has been highly overlooked by this house so far is the concept of ego that comes into a person, 18-year-old or a 16-year-old mind, when he's put together with a 13-year-old or 12-year-old mind. This is the first thing, because that person, even if a normal human being sees that he's being over the years, we have seen that this age-based classroom is usually dividing students on the basis of age, of different ages, putting together. When we move into a system that will group students on the basis of ability and not on the basis of age, when a student of age 18-year-old is put with a student of age 13-year-old, he obviously will think that he has a lesser amount of capability, lesser amount of ability. Therefore, he's being put with a 13-year-old, because that's what he has seen over the years. Because come to my second point, it is done in these multi-age classrooms, that they are, like some of my proposition speakers also said, dividing on the basis of the parts in which a particular student succeeds in. For example, we divide a students on the basis of succeeding in science. Do you think that will actually succeeding in science? Yeah. So do you think that will actually adding only science? So when he grows up, he will not have that overall knowledge of the all the different things that he had to learn. Must also understand that in most cases it has been seen that there is a negative output received from the parents when these multi-age classrooms are implemented. This is because the parents obviously see that when their son is put with a age group of with a group which is considered dumb, which is considered less in less amount of ability than other group of students, then it will be seen that that child will obviously think that I am in this group, I am put, for example, in this dumping ground, so I will not be able to progress because I am expected to have this amount of low ability. In case if a class has
Wrap
10%
up with Vidya.
dumb students, yeah, yeah. So to come to my last point, suppose in a class it has 10% dumb students and 90% intelligent students. Over the years that they will be together, the 10% dumb students will obviously have a less progressive rate, will slowly and slowly learn from the other students and overall have a positive development. So these are just some of the reasons why this implementing this system is not at all feasible.
Right. Fair enough. Right. 1 second, guys. Right. So we have come to the end of the speeches for today's debate. Thank you, Aditya, for your speech. We will now be taking questions upon Aditya's speech. We'll take one, and we'll take one question from Sia, and then move on to either Ranak or I if we have a question. Sia, go ahead.
Right. So you said that students, it wouldn't be beneficial if they only learn and progress in science. So when they grow up, they wouldn't be developed in other aspects. But just because the student is good at science, we're not talking about teaching them only one subject in school, right? That's not what the topic is. It's just that the students paired together are good at science. So they will progress faster in science. But that doesn't mean they won't learn other subjects. They will also learn other subjects, but possibly at a lower pace compared to science. So, how
Right.
do you justify what you said?
Yeah, yeah. So when we are dividing this into these ability groups, for example, like I stated, dividing them into science group, you will understand that when a student sees that he's succeeding in a particular subject better than the rest, it is obviously it comes to his mind that I am succeeding in this subject. All the other students in my class also are succeeding in this subject. So why not I continue with this subject? Because a 10-year-old would obviously try to learn more of what he's succeeding in and what he is not, what he's failing in. So this will obviously stagnant growth and he will feel like they have a limited ability. Compared to when different age groups are present, it will be seen that in a particular age group, for example, where all students are based upon their ages and all the, yeah, yeah, I would like to conclude. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
Is
I
a
got your
follow-up
point.
allowed?
Regrettably, no, Sia, because we have some time constraints and we're trying to finish on a deadline. But yeah, I got your point, though, Sia. Don't worry about that. I think I know what you were getting at, so that's no issue. With that in mind, Ranak, do you have a question, or shall we wrap up for
I think I'd like to ask you a question.
today? Right, go ahead, Ranak.
Okay, Aditya, am I? I hope that's okay. So, Aditya, sorry for my rightist
It's
stance.
Aditya.
Aditya, okay. Aditya, sorry for my rightist stance, but I have to ask from a societal perspective. Do you think that it is right to sacrifice the brilliant potential of so many brilliant students who could have done better if they were flocked together for the ego of some students who are just not good enough? Do you think it's right from a societal point of view to sacrifice all of that potential because some of these not good enough students will just not feel good about being ranked with lower quality students or dumber, as someone put it?
Yeah. So to see with this, when they are in age group classes, even if a person who is excelling, let's say in a particular sub is excelling overall, then that person will have will that his development in no way will be stopped if put with let's say other people in his class who are of the same age but are dumb. Instead, that will increase. It will increase the development a bit as compared to a multi-age one. Because suppose when a person who is excelling is put in a class, he will always strive to be better because he's seeing that he's comparatively a bit better than the others, and therefore he will strive to achieve greater heights.
Right,
Okay.
fair enough. Thank you for the response, Aditya. With that in mind, we have come to the end of today's debate. So all that's left is for Anik and I to tally up our results, give you a bit of gyan from to be more colloquial from our side, and declare the results for today's debate. So we will be back in a quick second while we tabulate. All right, guys, we're back, and we have Ranak and I have tabulated our results. But before we actually declare it, I along with Ranak would like to say a few words. In my capacity, I think I felt today's debate was quite productive. There were a few points that you guys missed out on, which I'll elaborate on a little later. But I felt that when I give out your awards, I'll give you a little small line of feedback. But I think that a lot of you made some very good points, some that I didn't think of, and some of you had some very interesting, like the ways you really brought in your perspectives were pretty good. You guys articulated pretty well. There are some areas you could improve on, like the way you answer your questions, thinking a little outside the box when you're thinking on your feet. You need to like when a motion like this is given to you, you mustn't argue just on a very moral basis. Like say for instance, one speaker really brought up a lot of statistics based, and that there was one who brought up quite a bit of facts, one who brought up a lot of morals. So what you're going to want to do is, at least in my opinion, is find a middle ground between the two, where you state what like your moral belief is, so to speak, and at the same time you have some amount of factual basis on it. Something I've often told debaters here is that follow the system of Peel, which is a system you've probably learned in your English classes, which is point, elaborate, evidence, and link, which is basically the point you're trying to make. Explain why you think this is correct, find a bit of factual evidence to support it, and then link that evidence to the point you were trying to make. And that, it's a very foolproof mechanism if you do it right. So keeping that in mind, the points that you guys really missed out on was, try to during debates that have such like morality based concepts, like that's on a very philosophical standpoint. You need to actually, so when I asked you guys questions about do you think this is right, you're definitely allowed to say this is right or this is wrong, but you're still supposed to say, like, say for example, I told you, would it be fair to the five people, or would it be fair to the one, or would it be unfair to the one person? Feel free to say, like, it's okay if only the one person is benefiting. Feel free to make your own political standpoints met, because you can still bring in your own perspective on it. You can say, okay, fine, it may not be fair to the other people, but I think that the one person excelling is better than the five stupid people, right? Because the five stupid people may not be able to do as much in the long run as compared to that one smart person. Now think of, you can say something like this, right? So that is not something I can forbid you from saying, right? Anything that will help you reinforce your stance, make it more foolproof, put your foot down, be a bit more unique compared to your fellow debaters, that is what will get you ahead on every card. Forget debates in any matter whatsoever. If you have a different stance that you can justify well, you're gold. Now, that in mind, I have not much else to say. And Ranak, if you have anything to say, please go right ahead.
Yeah, Surya, thank you for preaching so much radicalism. Thank you. But I think the only thing which I would like to say is that the one point which none of you brought up and I think was a great miss was that above all, education is a social institution. All of you targeted education from that one individual's point of view or of these students' point of view, right? But I think for the fact that education is a social institution, you could have targeted it from how it would have affected society as a whole, which I tried to go into in my last question. But yeah, I think except for that, it was great. I heard lots of interesting points. I had a good time.
Right, Ranak, is that it?
Yeah.
All right. Um So yeah, thank you, Ranak. That in mind, Ranak and I had a bit of a unanimous decision, except on one area where we had a difference of like 1 point, which really differentiated the first and the second speaker for today's debate, which was on my mark sheet actually. So I'll start off with third place. It was Advitya Das. It and Advitya, you had some really good points. I only think that you should be able to think on your feet a little bit more, uh, and think on your feet a little bit more because it seems that you really know your stuff, right? But try to, when you're put in a place to think, try not to think here and there a bit. Like, you remember how in the tournament you took part and you had to refer to a lot of content once. Of course it's much better from there, but you're going up to the mark there, but you still have quite a few years in terms of debating on the school level. So it's definitely something you can work on, and we're having debates weekly, so yeah, I mean, you can always practice any new strategy that you want to apply. That in mind, in second place, we had Sia Agarwal from the opposition, from the proposition. Sia, you also made some excellent points. You articulated very, very well. You could answer the question I asked you. You answered it pretty well, and all around it was quite good. But the only thing I'd like to tell you is that, I think, I'm not entirely sure, but you were referring to something sometime in between. I don't know what it was, but it's completely okay to refer to something, but try not to, because somewhere in between you may not have noticed it, but you were fumbling with a little bit of content, and you didn't really seem like you were able to articulate in terms of your speaking skills. But then when you're like, it has a little bit of a different impact, like, right, like, say for example, if I was think of it like this, right, I am talking to you on the same level, but I'm looking at my book. Does it have that same effect, or does it have better effect when I'm looking at you, camera to camera, right? So think of it on that level, right? So I would like it better if you spoke to me rather than spoke to me while looking at something else, right? So think of it on that level. If you really want to refer to something, just to be sure, which is not something you can do in real life debates, but on an online debate, like, probably just list down one or two bullet points, right? You may look at it, like, quickly look down, and then, okay, this is what I was talking about. Elaborate. Right. That way it doesn't show me that you're not sure about your stuff. It seemed that you were good with your content because you may have written that out, but try to be a bit more independent when you're trying to speak, right? Try not to take too many aids. So that was it for me. And in first position, it was Oritro Mukherjee. Oritro, you two, very similar to Sia, you were very on point there. I think the only thing that differentiated the two of you was that Oritro was a little better in terms of thinking on his feet, and you weren't really referring to much else. So keeping that in mind, uh, yeah, congratulations, Aritro, Sia, and Advitya. And before we close, Akash, uh, the difference between you and Advitya, as a matter of fact, was about a mark. And I'd like to tell you that your points were good. Okay, your points were good. There were a bit of fallacies in your logic here and there. You'll see it when you really look at the speech. Try to, although it may seem pretty cool that you've established your point, I rest my case but not my stance. It's a very cool way to end. I agree, right? But utilize your time, as if you've made enough points within that 2 minutes, good. But better take more content. It's fine if you go maybe 10 seconds over the mark, but 10 seconds under, you need to find, you weren't 10 seconds under, you were over a minute under, right? You need to find a way to extend your content, right? You were rushing through your speech, right? Some people were taking their time making their points, right? Try to enunciate what you're saying a little bit better. Take your time, right? As long as you give me good points, you can give me a million shitty points, okay, I won't mark you well, right? But if you give me 3 4 very good points, structured, tied together, within 3 minutes, that's excellent, right? Try to articulate a bit more, because you seem to be sure about your content, right? There's nothing else for me to add, but good job, guys. Other than that, is there anything you guys would like to say? Anything, Ranak, anyone, before we wrap up? All right, excellent. Well, thank you guys for coming in. We'll be having more such weekly debates over the next few weeks as usual. So I hope we can see familiar faces back again. And yeah, that's it for now. And yeah, take care. And that's what that was.